Hello, School Transportation Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Tony Cortman, publisher and president of School Transportation News. We're glad you made it. This podcast is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software, as well as our partners at IC Bus and Student Transportation of America. Our special guest today is Shelly Hall, the SVP of Health and Safety for STA, Student Transportation of America, which is one of the nation's largest contracting services out there for school buses. And we're excited to talk to Shelly about all the great training and things that they got going on. Some interesting nuggets there for you guys to jump into. But before we dive into the headlines, a message from IC Bus. Today's tech tip is brought to you by IC Bus. Looking for ways to improve your on-time performance and reduce operating costs? All IC Bus CE series school buses come standard with a factory-installed telematics device, including a 5-year connectivity subscription. You'll gain access to on-command connection, an industry-leading remote diagnostic solution, providing data that is visible, easy to understand, and actionable. With OCC, your school district will have visibility to vehicle health and performance data at your fingertips, including EV-specific information like state of charge and estimated range. Learn about other standard capabilities of their connected vehicles at icbus.com. That's icbus.com. All right, we're back. I have always with me the amazing Ryan Gray, feeling a little weathered. Maybe the cold winter has you a little weathered, Ryan, a little sicky.
Fighting it a little bit. First of the year, we had a little bit of rain, so I think some of that got to me, but I mean, I've been worse for wear, but that just excuse my little bit nasally, raspy voice.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I just came back myself from the NSTA meeting. They have their annual midwinter conference down in Florida. Great conversations down there. Got to catch up with Executive Director Kurt Mackeson, and they ran a great event, great conversations all around private fleets and kind of what are the most hot button items for them, and always good to get legislative updates. Obviously, we're in an election year, as we all know, and there's definitely rumblings about how this could impact the long-term momentum of all this green movement. So we'll see how it all plays out, but definitely there's going to be a lot of fodder and a lot of conversations as people look at either accelerating or throttling back their EV investments and making sure, what's the right fuel type for them and how do they work through the nuance. Definitely some of the bigger topics that were happening. There was a panel discussion with basically all the major OEMs, and it all kind of harkened back to work with your utility to be sure that they're involved. And not all utilities are as easy to work with, some easier than others. So it's a really big deal to be sure you engage all the utility partners early and really get a better understanding of the scope of work that you're looking to do. And, it's tough, Ryan, because whenever you apply for EPA grant money, which we just had a lot of winners, it's like winning the lottery, right? Like you're waiting. Hey, did I win? And now if you won, then it's like, okay, now what do we need to do? We got to go out and start engaging everyone. But everybody's kind of in this holding pattern until they get their EPA award, and then they can kind of take it from there. So it's an interesting dynamic when ordering buses because it's very unusual. Usually we're ordering based on need. You look at a replacement cycle. Many of you have specific replacement cycles, if you stick to them or not. A lot of it is driven by budget, obviously. So those are always interesting dynamics, Ryan, to look at when we discuss these greater kind of political issues and what are the ramifications. Now, you and I have talked a lot about could that $5 billion be rolled back? But it would take an act of Congress to do something like that. If former President Trump should become the president again, then could that happen? But the big conversation was it's highly unlikely. But really, the other side of that coin is how would EPA be impacted, and CARB would definitely be impacted. They would probably look at GHG regs again. Would they roll that back? What would the implications of that be? So those seem to be big talking points in the energy sector specific to NSTA and what they're looking at, and a lot of the talk at the conference specifically.
Well, as we've learned, never sell President Trump short. Never say never with him. But as you mentioned, it would be unlikely. So I've been told that Clean School Bus, the latest reiteration, the 5-year, $5 billion Clean School Bus program would go away. Obviously, that is in law. As you mentioned, it would take an act of Congress to repeal that. And we know that there is some appetite to do that, but we can barely get the government funded on time, much less address electric school buses or, propane school buses for that matter. But, the lion's share, again, electric school buses. I think, in terms of, you mentioned the California Air Resources Board, I don't think they would be impacted if Trump comes into office, because again, California is a pretty staunchly Democrat state. There are 13 or 14 states that follow the CARB regulations. Now we've seen some of them, as we've discussed already, hit pause on some of their regulations in terms of clean trucks and buses, following what CARB has in place for its advanced clean trucks rule, because there's nothing available or limited supply of anything but electric for some of these states. We know that propane, basically there's one shop in town right now, Bluebird, and of course the folks at Bluebird would love if everybody who migrated over to their product, but we know that that's just not feasible. They can't address that need across the industry. At least it would be a challenge. So there's a lot of here. I know that you were telling me about some of the legislative updates, and certainly you mentioned EPA. We know that there is an appetite in the Republican Party to eliminate EPA. I don't know if that's going to happen. Those would be some pretty huge developments, but certainly scaling it back. We could see some of that. So certainly going forward, some of the programs that we're seeing, I know that they are working on another. Congress is finalizing another $1 billion for zero emissions heavy duty vehicles. School bus would have the lion's share of that. Now that's not, that needs to be finalized in terms of how that would work. Maybe that would be impacted somewhat. And again, certainly other things, at least for the next, if Trump does win the election, or for that matter, Nikki Haley. But right now Trump is leading, and we have many months ahead of us before we get to November, certainly. But it definitely seems like, if the Republicans regain the Oval Office, that we could at least see some stepping back or stepping away from the rush to green agenda of the Biden administration.
Yeah, some other legislative kind of priorities were the Jackie Walorski End Illegal School Bus Passing Act, the CERTS tax exemption, the School Bus Safety Act. Obviously, we just talked about clean school bus and heavy duty vehicle programs, and then DERA funding. So those were kind of the major topics that went down at the conference, and they unpacked those within different panel discussions and had deeper conversations around those subject matter. But very interesting, all things that have the potential to trickle down, but that stuff needs to pass first, Ryan, and there's definitely people for it and people against it. And when you have accidents like what happened within Ohio, obviously with the student being ejected and causing the work group, we're keeping an eye on all the kind of situational things that have happened that cause more momentum to drive some of these bills to really get a little more notoriety in the press, as well as, does that give them a higher probability of passing? It will be tougher too in an election year, obviously, to spend money. I think it's tough when you look at some of these bills, like, would that even happen? I don't know. It becomes a big question mark, but we will keep everyone up to date as things happen. stnonline.com, all the latest and greatest news and information. While I was there at the conference, they yielded some time to me to talk about the Innovator of the Year Award. If you guys remember, STN and NSTA partnered together to launch the Innovator of the Year Award, looking at innovative personnel that are tackling things in the area of safety, special needs, operational efficiency, energy. There's just a lot of different silos there that people can look at. Fleet maintenance, obviously our previous winner, Bill Griffiths, he had developed a pretty dynamic maintenance program for a very large contractor called Beacon Mobility. We had Alex Cook from First Student, which was the head of electrification, looking at their aggressive entry into the EV space, which continues to proliferate and grow, as they were the number one recipient of the recent EPA grant. So definitely there's a lot there for people to recognize different outstanding staff members for some of the things they're doing within organizations of private fleets specifically. And we have a nomination form up on the stnonline.com website. So if you've got any outstanding professionals in your organization, or if you're a supplier partner and you have someone that's doing really something outstanding, interesting, innovative, we'd love to hear about it. So please go on there, nominate. I believe, Ryan, we got a little while, right? Not till April that we have a cutoff on that. I think it's late April.
Yeah, April 26th. So
April 26th.
Yeah, we have some time.
Yeah, but that person gets featured on the cover of STN magazine, which is always great. We write a big article about them as well and their organization. So these are all really great things. And also STN works together with NSTA on the Contractor of the Year Award as well, which NSTA kind of spearheads that one a little further. But we're there to support and make sure we get the word out to everyone in the private contracted space to take advantage of all the good things NSTA is doing and STN. So all good stuff, Ryan. But want to kind of get to some other top headlines. I know you and I were talking a little more about some things that were happening out there in the industry. What's kind of leading the headlines these days?
Yeah, well, something that doesn't pertain specifically to school bus, but certainly impacts it. Most of us saw the Department of Justice release the pretty scathing report on the Robb Elementary School shooting in Uvalde, Texas, back on May 24th, 2022. We know that so many things went wrong that day, and if you haven't read the report, now it's 575 pages, so I'm warning you, but I've skimmed some of the highlights, and certainly law enforcement and really a lack of leadership, lack of incident command really took hold that day. And again, that's not transportation's role to respond to active shooter events. And, in that case, the incident commander who didn't think he was the incident commander, but he was, and everybody says he should have been. And he was the one who was barking the orders, teamed it as a barricaded suspect scenario rather than an active shooter. And all the active shooter training, talking to our police friends, they say, hey, you neutralize the threat, at the peril of the officers. You put yourselves in harm's way. The first and foremost is you eliminate that threat. And it took, an hour and 44 minutes or whatever it was from the time that they responded. And of course, 19 students, 10 and 11-year-old children, and their two teachers were tragically killed. Numerous others were wounded. But in that report, it was really the first timeline that I've seen. And of course, we've seen and read so many reports on this, but DOJ really, itemized it in chronological order of how it went down, and they discussed radio traffic, and certainly school buses were heavily involved that day, but pressed into action like never before, I think that we've seen in the industry, and hopefully never again. The reunification efforts is always what we think about first and foremost in terms of school transportation, school busing, whenever there's any, a big catastrophe, any major emergency. And certainly the buses were there to provide those reunification efforts. From that standpoint, one of the few things that went right that day. But even then, there's a really interesting article that I had not seen before, and I saw it referenced in this DOJ article. It goes back to December 20th of that year, so 7 months or so after this happened. And the Texas Tribune spoke with Sylvia Uragas, who was one of the school bus drivers at Uvalde ISD, and really, really fascinating report. I'm writing a little bit more on this with my editor's take column in the February issue. But she discusses how she was coming back from a field trip, and the radio. There was some radio traffic, about the buses were needed at the Robb Elementary School. There was a shooting, and really no one knew exactly what was going on. As has been detailed, the police didn't know what was going on scene, so it's really hard for other folks and school bus dispatchers to be relaying the correct information. There were some issues with police vehicles blocking entrances and blocking streets, and so that complicated things. But in short, Sylvie talks about how she was pressed into action to actually transport a couple of students who were wounded by gunfire to the hospital, along with a couple of Texas State Department of Public Safety troopers and some other children. And those are just things that school bus drivers don't prepare for. And that was, her point in this article, that she had never received this kind of training. There were parents on scene banging on her windows, demanding to be let in to see if their children were on board, demanding answers. She mentions that she locked the rear emergency door, something that's against policy, against protocol, but she was just fearful of what would happen if the parents overran the bus. Just a chaotic scene. But she and her fellow school bus drivers performed so admirably. And one of the aspects that jumped out to me from the DOJ report was mentioning these instances of, and school bus, basically saying the school buses shouldn't have been used to transport students to the hospital because these kids were bypassing triage with local EMTs. Police were just grabbing any kid and just throwing them on school buses. So obviously, it goes back to the failure of law enforcement. And, it's easy to throw stones after the fact. And certainly I'm not a police officer, never been trained on those things, but in talking to others who are, from a tactical standpoint, from a communication standpoint, there were obviously a lot of things that fell through the cracks. But this DOJ report mentions that school bus drivers, not by name, although it kind of alludes to it, but in terms of there were so many non-law enforcement, non-traditional first responders that were pressed into action that day, and that they need to be addressed and taken care of just as if they are an EMT or a police officer or a sheriff's deputy, FBI. Border Patrol was on scene, the Texas State Troopers, but that these staff saw some horrific things that they're not trained on, that they're not expected to do in their everyday walk of life. And granted, things happen in an emergency. This shouldn't, of course, never have gotten to the level of where it did. The shooter should have been neutralized far sooner than he was. And the chaos should not have reigned supreme for so many hours there at Robb Elementary School and its surrounding area. But it did. And so there's some valuable lessons to be learned by transportation, in terms of communications as well. And, we have an article that our friend Lonnie Harden writes in the February issue coming up on the importance of dispatchers. And our Taylor Ekbatani, she has an article coming out on SDNonline.com in February that looks a little bit more at dispatch and communications, and she speaks with the folks at Uvalde and unpacks that a little bit more. So, really sad, first of all, tragic But really makes you stop and pause and think about, student transporters are not always simply responsible for getting the kids on and off the bus and home safely. Sometimes these things do happen. Now, of course, there were so many other mitigating factors, but still to what I've been able to determine, there was just some really admirable work done by some of the transportation staff. Sylvia talks about her bus was covered in blood and she brought it back to the depot. And normally it's the bus driver's job to clean the bus. And the transportation staff was there like, no, you need to go. You need to stand down. We'll take care of it. And what did she do? She got another bus and drove back to Robb Elementary to see how she could help. So hopefully some good will come out of this. Those 19, babies, 10 and 11-year-old children that were murdered, their teachers. I say this over and over again, but whether it's a student who dies in a crash, dies at the danger zone, dies in some of these other emergencies, let's not let their names go in vain. So we're going to have a conversation around this topic in Reno at STN Expo. So our friend Brett Brooks will be back, and he's actually quoted in this article that I read from the Texas Tribune back in December 2022. And another thing that the industry can glean from this is the first aid kit enough that we have? I mean, Sylvia talks about, she refers to it as her Mickey Mouse first aid kit, and she had little more than Band-Aids on there. And here she has wounded students with gunshot wounds, so again, not what we would normally expect. And do we go out and have heavy duty first aid kits? Probably not, but just things to talk about in the industry. That's how we get better. We get together at our conferences and we talk about these types of scenarios. What would we do if this happens? Because sometimes, unfortunately, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah, appreciate that update, Ryan. Obviously, good takeaways, lessons learned. We'll keep diving deeper on that, guys. And before we get to our interview with Shelly Hall, we have a message from one of our sponsors. Do you remember a time when you could just cherry pick the best solution to run your school transportation operation? The best routing software may be one company. The best parent app could be another company. Those days are over. TransFinder said the old way of doing business doesn't work for today's busy and burdened school transportation departments. They need one partner, one solution. TransFinder has embraced this approach for years now, building award-winning solutions like Route Finder Plus, the driver app Wayfinder, parent app Stop Finder, and inventory management solution Service Finder. They also have field trip management solutions, Trip Finder, and Viewfinder, which provide critical routing information to other stakeholders in the district. Add to this TransFinder's award-winning hardware and industry's best support and service. You have the ingredients that make up one partner, one solution. It's not just a slogan. It's TransFinder's way of doing business. Learn more by emailing getplus@transfinder.com or calling 800-373-3609. That's 800-373-3609. Remember, one partner, one solution. All right, we're back. Guys, in case you didn't see the email on it, STN Expo, Indianapolis, May 31st through June 4th, as well as STN Expo in Reno, Nevada. That's July 12th through the 17th, plus Green Bus Summit, plus Transportation Director Summit. We got it all. Registration is open. Take advantage of the super early bird discount. Save $200. That's a big savings, right? Make sure you guys go on the website, stnexpo.com, pick your show, see which one's the best fit for you timing-wise. We'd love to see you this summer. But definitely get set up. Take a look at our preliminary agendas, social events. The trade shows are near selling out, so we'll have a plethora of different supplier partners for you to engage with. Definitely want to invite you, come out and be a part of the ultimate in school transportation training, maintenance, safety, special needs, operational efficiency, everything under the sun, guys. We got it for you. So please go check it out and be part of a great event. All right, without further ado, we'll be talking with Shelly Hall. All right, School Transportation Nation, we have a special guest with us today, the Senior VP of Health and Safety at Student Transportation of America, also known as STA, Miss Shelly Hall. Welcome, Shelly.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, be good to Shelly because this is her first podcast ever. And we need to make sure we take extra good care of her nation and give her all the grace that she deserves here. And as a safety professional, she's dealing with lots of things in her life. So she's keeping us all safe and the kids safe. So we got to make sure and take extra special care of Shelly today. So really glad you joined us and excited for our conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You want to dive in? How does one become the Senior Vice President of Health and Safety? What does that tenure look like, Shelly?
Oh, wow. So I think I've been in the industry now for close to 25 years or so, but I got my safety experience right out of college working in the insurance side of the business in loss control and safety, focused predominantly on transportation, working with UPS actually. And then was recruited over to work with a company that does public transportation. You guys, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the public transportation companies in that space, but I worked for TransDev for 12 years, and 7 years I was their VP of safety. And then about 7 years ago, I was recruited over to STA, and it's been a great transition to the student side. Going from public transport to student transportation was a little different, but I think I like it a little better.
And safety is, we hang our hat on safety in school transportation, Shelly. So you have a vital role at Student Transportation America. And then how many kids are you keeping safe on a daily basis? What does that look like from a fleet and students? Do you have a sense of that?
I think we transport over 1 million kids a day, a pretty large number. We're a pretty large company. If you can include our Canadian operations, we have over 22,000 vehicles on the road.
You got to keep an eye on a lot of things, Shelly, a lot of drivers. You probably have a lot of people in your organization, you're training and getting up to speed on new techniques and trying to be on the cutting edge, I assume, right?
Yes, trying every day, for sure.
Excellent. So we started the podcast talking a little bit about some of the newer concepts, specifically in special needs care. And we started talking about this word called Ukeru. And I was like, what is Ukeru? I have never heard of this. And so I needed a bit of an explanation of the Ukeru system and how you guys are integrating it into STA's kind of processes, specifically with special needs children. Can you talk a little bit about what Ukeru is and what the difference is between that system of care and traditional approaches? What does that look like? What's the Transportation Nation need to know about this new kind of system?
Yeah, well, it's new to us at STA, and Ukeru is a Japanese word that means to receive. We were having some challenges with our special needs ridership. And, as a company, we want to make sure we give our drivers and our monitors all the tools that they need to be successful to handle their situations daily. And Ukeru came to me. It was new to me too, Tony. I wasn't familiar with it through an employee at STA who, through, I think, a past experience, became certified in the teachings of Ukeru. And came to the safety group and said, Shelly, I think that this would be a great idea to utilize some of the principles that Ukeru trains folks to use to help us with our special needs population. So we went about doing our research, looking into it, and decided to certify our regional safety directors all across the United States in the Ukeru approach.
Interesting. So what really motivated you versus the traditional approaches to using this with special needs and McKinney-Vento students? What really drove you to that decision?
Yeah. So, we have a pretty robust training program at STA. We have an entire special needs training module that we've used for several years. But for whatever reason, we were still seeing that we were having difficulties, handling these situations. In some cases, our drivers were getting injured, and our student ridership could also get injured. And it was very stressful for both, right? The students and the drivers and the monitors. So when we looked at Ukeru, the difference here is it really focuses on how trauma affects, in this case, the students with special needs, and what that looks like and how to handle it. How to handle it with compassion and comfort, and realize, when these situations are happening, that, you can't just seclude someone or move them to a different portion of the bus or restrain them. You have to just, listen, show concern and compassion to try to diffuse the situation. If that doesn't work, the nice thing about Ukeru is they teach you other techniques on how to handle those situations. For example, using physical direction techniques or safe blocking techniques with the use of, with pads. So it's really unique and different. And my regional directors that have gone through the training are just like, wow, they didn't understand before, like the psychological or the biological neurological effects of trauma and how that could really be causing students to have issues on the bus, and how to deal with them.
Interesting. Yeah, I think whenever you've got a new system that you're exploring, and how many safety managers are you training? I mean, a million kids transported. You got to have a lot of safety managers keeping an eye on this, right?
Yeah, so we're starting at the regional level first. So I have 10 regional directors located all across the United States. Currently, we have 9 that are certified. We have 1 left, and they're signed up for their class, so they will be certified soon. And then what the goal is from there is to take it out to the local level and start with the locations that obviously have a higher number of special needs ridership, special needs children on the bus. And actually, we've had 1 session so far locally in Colorado that happened just this last week. And we trained 35 drivers and monitors on the Ukeru technique, and good feedback so far. It's really early. I was saying that, we may want to have a follow-up podcast at some point to talk about the success, but, slowly rolling it out across the country is the goal, taking a focused approach where we need to do so.
Yeah, train the trainer, right? When you got a big org structure, that sounds like a must do. And what does it really take to become certified? So when you do a train the trainer, what are the processes that are involved in the Ukeru system that you have to actually walk through to meet the test?
Yeah, so it's 16 hours, so 2 8-hour days. It's a combination of like a classroom, a lot of theory and understanding, and then the practical approach using and learning the techniques on how to redirect, physical redirection and the use of the pads for safe blocking. So yeah, the 9 people, they hold these sessions all across the United States and in multiple places. And so yeah, they went through the 16 hours, and then they have to go through an annual refresher to receive their recert.
Got it. Okay, so let's talk about the system itself a little bit. So I'm a student transporter. I transport special needs students. Traditionally, what do you see versus this system? And, should I be considering using this type of system? Obviously, if it takes 16 hours to become certified and then I got to engage my drivers, is it like, a lot of the industry, if it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So the thing is why is this type of system superior to what is being used now? And then maybe question 2 is, what would you consider a successful rollout of this kind of training, right? Because you're impacting students with special needs. What are kind of the KPIs that you see when you implement something like this?
Well, I'll answer the second portion. So obviously, I think we'll be able to track, do we have a reduction in workers' comp claims first hire drivers? Are they, are we reducing the injuries to them? Are we reducing any type of injury that may happen to our ridership because of a physical interaction? It may even help, I think in certain situations, if you don't handle special needs students with care and compassion and handle them correctly on the bus, it could lead to a complaint generated from the situation from the parent. So, we don't want that to happen either. We want these kids to feel safe. We want to make sure that, again, they're not injured during the transportation portion due to, how we interact with them. And likewise, we don't want our drivers injured as well. So I think those are the major ways we'll measure success. But also, I think, having communication with our drivers, them talking to us about, wow, these tools really helped me get through my day, made my day less stressful. I was able to diffuse situations on the vehicle that I've never been able to handle because I just wasn't comfortable. I didn't have maybe the skill set and the understanding on how to deal with it. And what Ukeru does is gives them the tools to do so.
That's very interesting. So would you consider maybe a higher driver retention rate because that kind of an outcome you feel might come out of something like this?
I hope so. I mean, with the current driver shortage, you want to do everything you can to retain your drivers. And, if they have to deal with really hard situations on the vehicle that makes driving really hard and stressful, you don't want to be there. You might want to go do something else. So I think that this could have an impact on retention. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, we're always looking at trends, right? So if someone sees this and says, "Oh, why should I implement it?" Right? Like I said, what I'm doing now seems to be working. But if people are complaining that, hey, they have driver shortages or there's challenges, are there other systems that we could put in place, other processes that could help address some other systemic issues? Because you're trying to be prescriptive, right? I have a driver shortage. What can I do? Is it throw more money at it? Is it, how do I provide a better work environment? So this is providing training for better student outcomes, better driver performance, better happiness in the workplace. So I could definitely see that. Are there any other kind of outcomes that you've seen so far as part of implementing this sort of thing with your team?
Yeah, I think it's really early. Like I said, we're just really finishing getting all of our trainers certified to teach it. I'm hoping after this Colorado session that we just had, that we'll be able to take a look at this 30, 60, 90 days down the road, and hopefully circle back with you and give you some information on it. But also, looking at the website, if you go on ukerusystems.com, there are some statistics there that talk about successful outcomes for some schools that have implemented the program. In many cases, they have reduced their workers' comp situations. They have reduced in their cases, the need to restrain a student. So, I think there's some proven outcomes based on Ukeru that have happened prior to us, making this decision to come here. But I think some of our outcomes are going to be in the future, and I hope to be able to report those back to you.
Yeah, that's really a unique program you're putting forward to kind of address special needs and McKinney-Vento students. And yeah, definitely keep us posted on that. Do you want to talk to some of the other safety initiatives maybe you have going at STA? And we have a little bit more time, but wanted to kind of see if you had any thoughts on sharing kind of in 2024, if there are any other kind of large initiatives that people should keep an eye on in terms of the arena of safety.
Wow. Well, you're actually opening up Pandora's box here. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're really focused on in 2024. We're really utilizing technology from a safety perspective right now. We're implementing a new compliance software I don't want to give a plug right now to company, but because we're in the initial phases of working with them on implementing the new compliance product. But that's really exciting. It'll automate a lot of our compliance management documents, how we manage a driver qualification file. It'll integrate with our background check vendor, integrate with our fleet software, a couple of different things. So that's really, really a big project that we'll be rolling out. What else are we doing that might be really neat for people to hear about? We have a really strong data analytics group and working to enhance how we utilize data in the field to develop action plans that address our injury trends. So, really building that out and making sure that the end user at the locations can see their accident injury trends and make decisions, on how to address them. So a really strong data approach to how we manage safety. And the neat thing is it integrates, Power BI integrates with some of our other systems. So I don't know, kind of technical there. This past summer, we did a really great precision driving program that we have in-house that certifies our trainers on how to teach folks to drive or how to teach or instruct behind the wheel training. So that was a really big initiative to kick off this school year. So those are some of the big things that we have going on. I don't know if there's specific questions or things around those initiatives that you'd like to talk about, but a lot going on at STA right now.
Yeah, I'm just fishing, Shelly. I'm just trying to get it out, pull it out of you. There's probably so much knowledge in that head of yours. We got to draw it out some way. But yeah, no, I think the school transportation nation, we see a lot of trends. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about energy and the shift towards electrification and alternative. And I know you guys were kind of at the forefront of pioneering propane energy school buses in the Midwest. And, we see the EPA announcements, and I'm sure you guys are participating at a large level. I work with Rachel Lane on your team to talk about that. She spoke at our Green Bus Summit at STN Expo. And so we work with you guys in those capacities. Maybe curious, with the advent of electric vehicles or zero emission vehicles, do you see that playing a part in your safety strategy? Is that something that's come up?
Well, ironically, I didn't mention that, but we do have a new electric vehicle training module that'll be released in the next month or so. We partnered with School Bus Safety Company on developing that. So that'll be a big rollout for us to implement that training nationwide. So that's the irony of you bringing that up. And I wish I would have thought of that one. But yeah, so we'll be releasing those training modules to the field shortly. And Rachel was involved, gave us technical expertise on, when we were building that out as a partnership with School Bus Safety Company.
Got it. And you mentioned School Bus Safety Company. I know they do a multitude of different training videos. Do you integrate and use some of the training modules online and certify drivers? I know there's a lot of regulatory things on keeping everybody compliant, the I's dotted and the T's crossed. How do you see yourself using kind of online training tools to kind of keep everybody fresh on all the latest and greatest?
Yeah, we've really kept the traditional approach of more, face-to-face classroom training with our drivers. On occasion we will utilize online platforms to do some training, but I'm a big, I love having the hands-on training, being able to interact with them. And we use School Bus Safety Company quite a bit. We use their driver training course. We use their safety leadership course. And have a really strong partnership with them. They have a good product. They put a really good product out there that's, focused for our industry, for the student transportation industry. But to answer your question, we're still very focused on in-person classroom learning, sprinkling in a little, online training here and there. But it hasn't been huge for us to move most of our training there. We did have to do that during COVID to adjust to, utilizing more of an LMS to deliver our training. But we're back in more face-to-face and more interactive training.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing about some of the safety initiatives that STA is doing and educating us on the Ukeru system. I mean, I've learned something today, which is always great. And guys, highly recommend checking it out. STA is pioneering really some great safety techniques here to help elevate the value of special needs transportation, and really something interesting to take away and share with your team and do a little research. And Shelly, is there any closing thoughts you wanted to share with the audience before we took off?
No, I really appreciate you giving me the chance to have my first podcast. Hopefully I'll get better at this if I'm asked back, or if we have a follow-up to talk about, how Ukeru has really, helped us here at STA. And so looking forward to having some good results by implementing the program nationwide.
See, Shelly's going to go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. She's going to be like a subscriber to School Transportation Nation. She's going to share with all her friends now. She's like, I'm on a podcast. So you guys should do the same. Make sure and join the podcast. Be a subscriber with us, guys. We love you, Nation. We love providing great information, having great guests like Shelly on. So thanks so much for jumping on. We're so glad you made it.
Thank you.
All right, great conversation with Shelly. Thanks so much to Ryan Gray for being a part, always sharing his knowledge about the latest and greatest headlines going on out in the school transportation industry. Special thanks to our sponsors as well, TransFinder, IC Bus, and Student Transportation of America. Guys, we couldn't do it without our sponsors, so be sure to go to the website. If you give them a call, let them know you heard it on the STN podcast. We always need that love, always supporting the nation. Guys, visit stnonline.com for all the latest news analysis in the school transportation industry. Be sure to subscribe on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you hit that button so you get it every week. We love you, nation. We'll see you next week.